Welcome to Not Your Typical Church Ladies, faith conversations for your real life. I'm Vicky, and each week I'm joined with my fellow workers in the vineyard, Anne and Karen, to break open the Sunday scriptures and talk about life and faith and everything in between. Join your Not Typical Church Ladies on this journey each week.
Hey everyone, welcome to Lent week 3. As we are becoming forever changed, our journey takes us this week down from the mountain where we were last week and to the well. Our gospel is the beautiful story of Jesus meeting the woman at the well. And before that, we have a story about Moses and the Israelites in the desert. So lots to talk about this week. Um, Karen or Vicky, do you guys, either of you guys want to get the ball rolling?
Moses. And in this one too, I was trying to find the quote, but like the idea of them complaining, like, like you, I don't know. I just keep picturing vibes in Moses's shoes. I'd be like, you were slaves, and I have like parted the Red Sea and given you like the chance for freedom in the land that you have been waiting to go back to, and you're gonna complain.
Oh my
Um,
gosh, I can't even I've been thinking about him, Moses, a lot as like a role model and leading through change, as we're right now. But it could be a little discouraging to hear some of his story because, let's go back even before they left Egypt, right? Because he's been back and forth with Pharaoh like 10 times
Right, yeah.
get these people out of Egypt. And I'm just thinking, like, part of me was like, can you imagine bringing the same issue to the staff meeting like 10 times in a row and nothing gets done? It's like
Wait,
we've
we
had
have, haven't we?
lives, right? Where it's just like, again, like, all right. But finally, he gets them out, right? Parts the sea. And they're in the desert for 40 years. And I know like 40 is a symbolic number, and all that. There are lots of ways to look at it. But here's the thing. If you ask Google Maps how long it takes to walk from Egypt to Israel, it'll tell you 6 days.
Wait, maybe it was like our grandparents who walked to school uphill both ways.
Yeah, but 40 years, 6 days, 40 years. Okay, I have questions because we know that God was leading these people. Like there was a pillar of cloud by day and a pillar of fire by night. And like, why did it take them so long? Right?
Yeah.
I
Well,
mean,
could it have taken so long because they didn't realize and they kept complaining? And like the very last line of the first reading is the Lord in our midst or not? Like
hey, the
Moses is like,
sapphire needs to
hello,
be
look at everything that God has done for us, and you still don't connect the dots.
right, because they were in this reading, they're complaining because they're thirsty, right?
Thirsty,
Before
yeah.
that, they were hungry, so God sent manna, and then they complained about the manna, and then so God sent quail, and like now they're thirsty again, So it's just like
Yeah.
God has been providing for you and answering your prayers over and over and over again,
Yeah.
and they're saying to Moses, like, "Why'd you make us leave Egypt?"
Yeah.
Make
Well,
us.
it's like the little kids. Well, my kids, they're not little anymore, but you feed
Mhm.
them, and then 10 minutes later, they're like, I'm hungry.
Yeah.
It's like, yeah. Would you rather have this
Dinner. I want
freedom?
cereal.
What was that?
You just feed him dinner and like 10 minutes later, like, I need some cereal.
Yeah. But again, I mean, is that going back to what we talked about last week with that trust?
Yeah.
Are we surrendering ourselves to trust in the Lord, or are we trying to let God have God's plan, but we do our own thing and then get mad when it doesn't work out?
Right.
Well, I think too, like the idea that maybe it took them so long because they wouldn't surrender. Like
Yeah.
they are constantly complaining. And if they had just trusted and, had let God do what God was doing and not have to keep making him do more things for them, maybe it would have been faster. But, that idea that they didn't understand the encounter they were having. as
Right.
opposed to like the woman in the well that we get to in the gospel who has like this encounter, right? It was almost like the opposite. They didn't see the fire and realize and make that connection of like they are resting with the Lord in
Yeah,
everything they're doing.
right. Jesus did it in 40 days, right? He was in the desert, let everything go in 40 days, comes back like ready for his road of ministry, even though it's taking him to the cross. And yeah, maybe you're right. Maybe God was leading them around the desert because they weren't ready. They weren't ready to really trust. They hadn't relinquished like he did. Yeah, I don't know. Lots to think about with that one.
God pulled the ultimate parent move.
Yeah. I'm gonna pull this car over. I know.
I love when we can connect stuff like that to our daily lives because it resonates so true. Like Moses could have been like my dad. Like seriously, stop.
God must have wanted them to take the scenic route,
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
guess. I don't
That's
know.
awesome.
Yeah. All right. Anything else on Moses before we talk about our woman at the well, Jesus? Oh, she's just great. I mean, that's a very long, long, long gospel, right? But
Mhm.
I love how the conversation is sort of like part debate, part banter, part like faith sharing. I mean, it's a very intimate conversation
Yeah.
between Jesus and this woman. And yeah, like you said, Vicky, like just a true, authentic encounter that she had with him, even though she was not someone anyone would have expected him, to pinpoint for this, to be the person to share his good news like that.
That's what I love about this passage because she wasn't a person who people would have thought or Jesus should have encountered. You know, you don't ever see Jesus going and only talking to the rich and, you know, the popular people. It's always those that are in need. And they don't realize that they're in need sometimes too.
Yeah, he'll break all kinds of taboos,
Yeah.
in this case, because of her ethnicity, because of her
Yeah.
gender, because of the fact that she was going to get water in the middle of the day when it's hot, when like a normal person would go early in the morning because maybe the other women didn't want to talk to her for whatever reason. Um, I was thinking, Karen, when I read this last Lent, I think you shared something about God's grace being like we expect it to be a trickle, but God wants to give us a waterfall kind of thing. I remember you
I
sharing,
think possibly, yeah.
and she's talking about this living water, and she's like, "Well, you and whose bucket are gonna like do this, right?" But like he doesn't just fill her cup or her bucket. It's like the grace that he unleashes on her flows through her, and she goes back to her village and shares, and people believe her because whatever change has happened in her, it's so remarkable and it's so true and it's so apparent that you know people listen.
Yeah. I love the persistence of her like rule breaking. You know,
Mhm.
like it's not bad to break rules all the time, but in the name of like the taboos, right?
Yeah,
Breaking taboos of in the greater good of Jesus's mission. And how many times have we as in everybody, not just the three of us, but been in situations where we felt like we couldn't say what we wanted to say because we felt that we would be, you know, isolated or whatever. Once think, no one's going to listen to me because of who
right.
I am.
Yep,
And
because it's just moved with her, like through her. Yeah.
yeah,
Hmm. What are you thinking, Vicky?
I love one of the things that really stuck out to me this year in this reading was that banter, that back and forth with them, and the honesty, right? Like
Right.
how honest she was in that encounter, and like how honest, I personally sometimes, like it's okay when you're in prayer to have those moments of all those feelings, right? Like that he can take it all. He can, like in this case, like kind of her like you do it, like, why are you making me do something for you? But that idea of that, like, as an idea of what prayer can be, that, like, her honest conversation with Jesus is the exact same conversations we can have with him.
I love that. Yeah, you don't have to watch what you say with God when you're in prayer. You just let it all out. That's what it is. Yeah. Right. No need to censor yourself in prayer ever.
Yeah. And even in the sacrament of reconciliation, I always tell like the little kids, I was like, you can't say something and then say, but, I did it because they hit me first or whatever, because you have to be authentic to yourself. And then you're fibbing to a priest in of itself and fibbing to God. I mean, God already knows, but I think we have this like mental thing going on in our heads that we don't like to think of ourselves as sinful. But we are. And we are going to do things. And that's what the awesomeness of our faith is we have these sacraments and the scriptures to remind us that even though we are sinful, we will receive everlasting mercy and be filled and transformed and everything if we just let God do what God is wanting to do with us. Yeah. I mean, she could have ran away. She could have been like, I can't talk to you. And then totally missed that encounter.
Yeah.
Well, I think too, that idea of her transformation, right? Like, she did that hard work with Jesus of that back and forth and that like digging deep and like looking at everything. And that's what truly allows her to transform. And that's like the ugly part of change, right? Like that's the ugly part of any type of change in the world. You have to like dig deep and really see like what's working, what's not working. And but ultimately it leads for her this beauty of like her being such a witness to the true gospel because of her change that was so apparent to the people.
She leaves that well as transfigured as Jesus was last week when we were when we were up on the mountain, because the encounter with Jesus does that. It changes everything. Any last minute things, you guys, before we end for the week?
Just one quick thing is like, I just love the idea that who Jesus is choosing is such a good representation of who we are today, and that even if this woman can be transformed, how awesome is that? And what about the disciples who were scared, but then they were transformed, even though they were called by Jesus? So everyone that we've been listening to has been transformed in some way, shape, or form. So we can be transformed too if we just allow it to happen.
All right. Words to end on. Thanks, everybody. Have a great week.
Bye.
Bye.
Next week.
On behalf of Anne, Karen, and myself, thank you again for listening to this episode of Faith Conversations for Your Real Life. Please make sure to subscribe to wherever you're listening or watching this episode. You can find the readings linked in the description box below, and we can't wait to see you again next time on Faith Conversations for Your Real Life with your favorite not so typical church ladies.